So when you need to take a picture of your artwork with your Chromebook, here's how you do it. Click on the camera. If the camera's not on the bottom down here, click on this circle and you can select the camera from here. So hold up your picture as best as you can. Try and get it as square as possible. And if you have to angle your laptop so that it's brighter, try and do that as well. Square it as much as possible on the bottom and the top. Get it as large as you can or as close as you can, but make sure that the whole picture is in there. And then click the button. It takes a picture of your image. Click on this little circle down here to open up the picture. And what we want to do is crop it. This is the cropping and rotating tool here. So I'm going to click this. And then I'm going to pull the top part down to the very edge of the paper. And then do the same thing on all sides. It's okay if your fingers are showing a little bit, but for the most part, I don't want your face in there. Not that you're not attractive. It's just we want to focus on the drawing itself. So once I've cropped it as tight as possible, click Done. And then we want to change the brightness and contrast in here. So here's how that's done. I'm going to click on this tool right here, which is called Lighting Filters. For the exposure, it's going to make it very white in the background, all those grays, but I'm going to barely move it over to the right. You don't want to move it too far over, otherwise it'll completely black out or white out. So I'm just going to move it over until it makes the most sense. Then I'm going to bump up the contrast by moving this over to the right. And I'm also going to change the saturation and move it to the right. So you can play around with these. Notice how it changes to a sort of a blue tint when you do that. So play with the saturation and the contrast until it looks mostly white. You can still see some blue in here, so I'm going to move the saturation a little bit more to the left. Every time you change the contrast, it also alters the saturation. So that's actually a pretty good image right there. I'm going to select Save. And then I'm going to click on this to share it. Copy this. And it should be in my folder here under Camera. Double click. Click on this to see what the images look like. I actually took two pictures of it. This one looks better than this one. There's still too much saturation in here. So I'm going to delete this one. And then over here on the left, if you're logged in correctly, you can go right to your Google Drive, click this little arrow next to My Drive. You can move this over to the right a little bit so that you can see all of your folders. And then find the folder that has the rest of your drawings in. It should be listed with your first initial, last name, and the word art. And since I don't have an art student folder, I created this one. So it should say art. This first number is what grade you're in. Or excuse me, this first number or this first hashtag is what period you have. The second one is what grade you're in. As long as there's two numbers and I can figure out where it's at, that'll work just fine. So I'm just going to click on this folder to see what's in there. Then I'm going to go back to the camera. Oops, where'd it go? Back to the camera. So I can see the file here, but I also want to go to that folder on my drive. So I'm using the arrow key on the keyboard to keyboard down. And I'm going to click and drag this image right into that folder. Select copy. When the image shows up, you can change the name of it by clicking one time on it, going over here to the options and selecting rename. Didn't select it. So I double clicked on it, but that's not what I wanted it to do. I want to rename it in here in this folder. So I'm going to hold the Alt key down on my computer keyboard, click on it, and select rename. And then I'm going to type in helmet. Actually, let's call it Trojan helmet. Underscore, first initial, last name. And then I'm going to call this 8P1, which stands for 8th grade, period 1. And that's the one that you're